What's going on there, guys? Good afternoon. It's the Earthmaster here on this weekend update. It is Saturday, August 27th, 2022, about 11:43 a.m. California time. Latest quake coming into the Earthquake 3D globe, a 2.0, out in the beautiful state of Oklahoma. Also getting, had a 5.2 over here around the Philippines come in just within the last few minutes as well. So it looks like things may be starting to finally ramp up far as the westward pressure movement goes over here, but we will watch that pretty closely throughout the day. Kind of the big topic right now, a lot of solar weather activity ramping up on the sun. Got a lot of red on this map here, indicating some much needed, much called for advisories, so to speak. We're looking at possibly some X-flare potential here, and also a G1 class storm in the forecast, in the 3-day geomagnetic forecast right there. So it looks like overnight we did have a little unexpected event pop in on the KP index board up around the 4 level, possibly sparking some auroras at the higher latitudes. For now, though, the flares are crackling with, pretty much crackling with M flares right now. We have been on a pretty good uptick in solar flare activity over the last 48 hours. And as you can see here, there's been quite a few of them. Now the lines here indicated on the right, M flare category level. And then as you go down here on the X-ray flare class, that's going to be the lower threat, which is a C flare, and so on. We haven't seen any X flares yet, but we've seen probably about, I'm counting these here, about 8 M flares, possibly more, in the last 48 hours. Got to remember all these little peaks here stretching up into the M flare category, and even in here I think we had about 3 M flares. We had an M7.2 pop off, and then within the shadow of that long duration solar flare we've seen a couple other lower grade M flares pop off as well. And then we died down a little bit and then had another M flare kick off last night. And since then, it's still kind of crackling there. There's a couple low-grade M flares as well. Looks like the last one was a M1.8. So things are very active on the sun right now. And it's mostly coming from this bad boy right here, which is now kind of departing the southwestern limb of the sun. And is kind of, well, it is facing away from us and will continue to face away from us. And anything that does spark off will, if it's flare related, will definitely affect the frequency range there on the D region absorption map, the DRAP map. It's basically radio blackouts at the high frequency range. So these flares, they can definitely cause almost like instant reaction here on Earth when it comes to those radio bands. But any subsequent like CME or mass explosion that would be produced with a big flare would not be Earth directed. So, but that's not the only one that's kind of sparking out there. There's a couple other sunspots that we were watching pretty closely. We got 3088 is the one that is the bad boy, sparking off a bunch of M flares, but also 3089 over here. As well, producing quite a few M flares. A lot of these sunspots are looking very capable of producing some M flares, so we'll watch this as the day progresses. This one here facing right at us, and a couple other ones as well. In the coming hours here, we'll see if they can produce anything, and see if they can't bring us a nice CME that would be Earth directed. 3086 is still that one that's kind of sitting within the coronal hole. Kind of neat looking. Here's the latest imagery right here. Got that coronal hole and the pretty nice sunspot within the middle of it. It's pretty crazy to look at. There's the 3088, the bad boy, so to speak, and looks like that thing is still about ready to spark off some good flares. And these ones right here, we'll watch them as they, like I said, as the day advances. And let's see what their class is. We got 3088 down here, so that's going to be the southwestern limb. That's the bad boy. It's kind of sparking off quite a few flares. And right now they only have a noteworthy event as an M4.8, but they've had more than that sparking up there. 3088, 3086, and 3089 are the ones that we're kind of looking at that will be facing that will be facing us. Okay, so they have this one here as a beta gamma magnetic class, possibly producing another M flare. X flare remains at about 1% for this specific sunspot. This is the one that produced the M7.2 and the M5.3, but they're not listing all the M flares that have taken place. They only show 5 right here, and you can add a couple more onto that list over the last 48 hours. So 3089 looks like they have the most potential, at least for the forecast goes, in producing a flare. 3088, that bad boy. 3080. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back here. 3089 is the one that we're watching, right? It's in the red. 3088 is a bad boy over here on the southwestern limb. Either way, there's a lot of activity sparking off right now, folks. I think we need to watch all of these sunspots over the course of the hours and days ahead, not to mention a possible glancing blow from a CME on the 28th and 29th time frame. Looks like just right now a G1 class storm possibility, but we'll see how that plays out. All right, let's see what else we got here. Oh, the other kind of a bigger story right now is Yellowstone still crackling and popping, not in the solar flare department, so to speak, but in earthquakes. Quite a bit of swarming kicking off overnight and this morning time frame again at Yellowstone National Park. When I say swarming, it's basically a lot of earthquakes in a continual sequence that's taken place here. And this is day number 3 of the earthquake swarm that's taken place here at Yellowstone. If we check out the previous day yesterday, we had about the same amount of earthquakes. And then the day prior to that is when it kind of all began with a couple threes. You can see that here on the map. And then it just kind of took off here in the earthquake department. So right now, the latest map here still looks like the activity is confined to the Maple Creek area, Holmes Hill region. That's kind of where the epicenter of all the earthquake activity is taking place. And I think this one here kind of shows us a little bit more of the very small quakes that are taking place, very small, in this area. But we did have some 2s and 3s over the last couple days. Now the USGS is reporting, we'll get to that earthquake over here in a little bit. USGS is probably only reporting 2.5 and above, because notice their last 3-pointer was from yesterday, and they haven't shown any of these other smaller 1s and 2s on the map here. So the ones that have been above 2.5 looks like they are listed on their preliminary earthquake data reporting system, so it does get put out. But far as these other quakes, all these other bunch of them, and there's a bunch overnight and this morning time frame. I'm sure they'll get to them Monday morning, but there's definitely a good handful of earthquakes there at Yellowstone National Park, and the majority of them are underneath 2.5. But it's ongoing. It's definitely an ongoing swarm there at Yellowstone, and I don't think it's gonna go away in a blink of an eye, unless a lot of times what happens here, folks, when we get a lot of quiet activity here along the western Pacific, and not to mention the west coast, if this thing starts to go quiet as well, we start to notice a lot of inland pressure movement and a lot of earthquakes in kind of various places, and little swarms taking place, like at Yellowstone, right up against the North American Craton area, kind of squeezing this area, so to speak. But that doesn't mean the west coast is just kind of lightly pressurized. I think we're just kind of built up here pretty nicely to where we're not seeing a whole lot of earthquake activity, but there's still a lot of pressure here along the west coast, kind of locked, if you will, and that's kind of transferring all that pressure inland, well inland, up against the North American Craton here, right up against the area where Yellowstone is. Looks like we've seen another earthquake down there in New Mexico border. And these other earthquakes that you see in Oklahoma, Texas area, all oil pumping operation earthquakes. So right now these guys, yeah, they only got about 7 earthquakes here, and that's over the last 24 hours. The last 7 days in this little swarm sequence, and there's way more than 32 of them. But that's what they have listed here. And again, I think they only have 2.5 and above for the weekend being reported, as the last earthquake there was 3.0 yesterday. And since then, they've only included the 2.7 and a 2.8. So things are still rocking and rolling in the Yellowstone area, and we'll watch it. I don't think it's going to drop off, like I mentioned, until we see some release of pressure here along the western Pacific. And I'm talking probably more than just a 5, which, by the way, did come in. This one came in right around where that 7.2 struck here a week or so back. Let's see if it's still listed on the map. Has it been over a month? It has. Darn it. Time's just flying by. But this area did see the pretty large earthquake here last month, over 30 days, obviously. And it's within that region. So I believe that some aftershock sequences there taking place in the Philippines. 5.2 at 38 kilometers deep. Aside from that, look at that. It's still relatively quiet throughout the rest of the Philippine plate. The Pacific Ring of Fire, the Pacific plate here down through the Indonesia area. All just very small quakes here. And this activity is from yesterday. So a lot of older movement with these 2 quakes. So no new activity really to report aside from that 5-pointer. Yes, there is on the EMSC model. There's always going to be some smaller quakes taking place. Let me bring this up here real quick and see what we got here. Even on their map, it's pretty spotty. So we would have to go into the smaller scale. We'll zoom in a little bit and see if we got some of these smaller quakes to report. And there's a few of them, some 2s and 3s. Remember, USGS does not show anything above the 4.0 threshold for the international community. Got to go to a different agency for that. And some activity around the New Zealand area as well in the 2 and 3 range. Looks like the latest a 3.1 here within the last hour or so. And but still, overall, technically speaking, this is not a lot of activity along the western Pacific. So I think things are building up pretty nicely here. And it's been 2 or 3 days since we've seen any since we've really seen any movement here along this plate boundary far as 4.0 and above goes. So things building up. The question is where. And I think if anything, we're probably going to see, because we haven't really caught up too much in the earthquake department here around the Fiji area, Samoa, Tonga region. We haven't seen a whole lot of activity here in the past month or so. Yes, we've had deep earthquakes, but far as its typical background movement, it's kind of dwindling in that department. Also up here in the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, this one's been quiet for quite a few months far as large-scale activity goes. Actually, we could probably go the past couple of years it's been relatively quiet here far as any major adjustment. Yes, occasional 5, maybe occasional 6, but this thing could definitely produce a much larger earthquake than that magnitude, and the slip rate here is super duper high in terms of accumulated stress. Up in Alaska, a little spotty activity, it looks like, up through the Cook Inlet. A little swarming going on here. Near the, what is this? Trident Volcano. Now, I haven't heard anything new from the USGS on this, as far as any type of unrest. Let's check that out real quick and see what we got. Alrighty, let's see here. There's a bunch of them. Alaska is riddled, completely riddled with volcanoes everywhere. And this mix of green ones, it looks like. Let's see if we can find it. It's been a while since I've checked out the any of specific volcanoes within this area. It kind of looks like it's near that one. Trident's right here. Everything looks green and normal. Let's see. Let's go to the site here real quick and see what we got. Trident. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Or Trident. Trident is an eroded volcanic complex consisting of 3 stratovolcanoes and numerous domes. Let's see here. A new fragmental cone was built beginning in 1953. Most recent activity looks like, yeah, so it's been quiet for a little while. Like I said, I really don't know too much info about this specific volcano, but kind of looks like it's doing a little swarming right now within that area of that volcano. So we'll watch that closely. It's just some, right now it's just some low-grade microquake activity. And let's check out the last 7 days. Yeah, it looks like there's actually been a pretty good cluster of quakes there at that volcano. And yeah, it's definitely confined to the Trident region. So we'll see if the USGS is going to report on any of that. Looks like the majority of the activity was on the 25th, 26th time frame. So we'll continue to watch that. Rest of the area looks very typical as far as the plate boundary goes. The movement out through Anchorage, right around the Denali area as well. Let's see. All right, so we covered Yellowstone. Let's go ahead and cover California real quick. See if we got anything kicking up out here aside from the typical movement around the Clear Lake volcanic fields. That's the Calpine hydrothermal operations there taking place. Let's see. Not a whole lot going on through the Bay Area. Long Valley supervolcano looks fairly quiet as well. Just a couple within the vicinity of the supervolcano, but nothing major. Just 1.0, the largest in that little microquake activity. Not a whole lot going on through Ridgecrest today or across the Garlock Fault shear zone. Southern California looks a little spotty as well. Just a 1.2 within the last hour. No major swarms to report around the Southern California area right now. We did see some activity in the Gulf of California, 3.2. A little bit further south into the area. So we know the pressure is definitely there, but there's not a whole lot moving right now. Texas, Oklahoma, got 2.2 near Bradley, Oklahoma. And I believe this new Madrid zone here, earthquake, is from last night. Near the Tiptonville, Tennessee area, 2.2. Eastern part of the country looks pretty quiet. I believe this area seen, this was last night, wasn't it? I think it was. Let's see here. Yeah, this area actually seen a couple earthquakes here over the last week or so. 2.8, 1.8, and 2.6 here. It's kind of been ongoing since we've seen sudden, kind of like a sudden halt of earthquake activity over here. Again, I think we need to watch the West Coast, folks. Yellowstone's going to continue to swarm. Alaska doing its thing there until we see some major adjustment up here further to the west and also around the Tonga and Fiji area. So we'll watch that. 5.0, I don't think that's enough to get things going as far as the ball goes, as far as the westward pressure movement goes. You know, generally speaking, this Pacific plate moves towards the northwest, and a lot of pressure does increase here. But when this is not moving, when everything's kind of stuck here, building up pressure, we get these plates interacting over here along the eastern Pacific. And I'm really surprised South America hasn't really seen anything yet. That's awfully quiet as well. Kind of seems like the North American plate is the hot spot right now. Kind of bordering the Pacific plate there. So we'll watch it pretty closely, folks. Again, Yellowstone National Park continuing to swarm. And I got to see if I can't access a different station here. The one I'm monitoring on the live stream is not close enough. So I'm going to be working on that here after this update video. See if we can't get a better view. So swarm's still continuing. The solar weather activity is still ramping up. And I think we have a... chance of seeing an X flare, although you know, with 3089 it does have a beta gamma magnetic class field, and and it is kind of growing. And that one is the one that will be facing us here shortly, 3089. These other sunspots have a good potential as well. 3088, the bad boy, he's leaving, but he's not leaving without a screaming and hissing fit there. So we'll watch for some more M flares from 3088 over the course of today. So we'll see what happens, folks. Alrighty, I'm going to bounce off here, and we'll keep an eye on the earthquake activity. And again, I'm just gonna see if I can't pull up a Yellowstone station that's a little bit more closer. Right now, I got this one keyed up right here. It's called Canyon, Yellowstone, Wyoming area, but that's a little far away from the swarming epicenter. And I'll do my best to key up a different station so we can keep an eye on the continual swarm there at Yellowstone. Alright guys, have a good day. Stay safe out there. We will chat you guys a little bit later on tonight with the update video. Till then, peace out everyone.